You've been lied to. This video is talking fundamentally about how the people that are pushing for things like no more public school vouchers, but also at the same time fighting so desperately to restrict free college. I don't understand these people because those two things are fundamentally contradictory, and we'll talk about why here in just a moment. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you do, be sure to subscribe. Helps out this channel that is shirt-based. But specifically for this video, the reason I want to talk about this is because of this sort of fundamental discrepancy. See, there are a lot of people who are pushing for things like school vouchers as a replacement for public schools. First off, these school vouchers already would be taking from the money that goes into public schools, defunding those public schools further, which desperately need that funding. The funding in the US public school system is abysmal at best and has a lot of flaws. I'll also talk about it. Well, I'll leave that maybe as a topic for another video, but generally speaking, it's not a perfect system. Absolutely not. But what it is universal, right? And universal systems I like to think of as generally good because we don't really question that public school is free universally because it's just the norm. It's the status quo. It's the situation we already exist in. But we can very easily extend that acceptance towards things like college, right? But in the opposite direction, privatizing all school, making none of it free, really hurts a lot of people for a few reasons. Now you might think, but these vouchers, they'll pay for these private schools. And that's silly, right? Your tax dollars going to pay for private schools instead of public schools. Your tax dollars are still going to a school, but in this case, it's going to a school that is also being funded on the front end by tuition costs as well, essentially double dipping. But even ignoring that for just a moment, remember, most wealthy families have access to things like private schools. They don't have to take that option, obviously. They can still send their kids to public schools, but many don't, and that's well within their rights, right? No one's arguing with that. But remember that those private schools do exist today, tuition and all. So imagine suddenly that your whole system, your whole world shakes up. Private schools are now the thing. Public schools are gone. You may have gone to them as a kid, but now your kids are going to have to go to private school too because all public schools have been closed or whatever the case may be in this scenario. But it's okay. Relax, right? We got you. We got you a voucher for these private schools. Here's $10,000 off. But the private school is $20,000 for tuition, and it turns out it's the only one that's near enough to you to be practical. And they don't provide their own transportation, so you're still going to have to drive anyway. But the point being, $20,000. Are you going to be able to make up that difference? Are you going to be able to suddenly come up with $10,000 for your kid to go to school? God forbid you have more than one kid, right? That's difficult to ask of anybody. But you know who can come up with that $10,000 and who already was coming up with $20,000? The wealthier families who were sending their kids to those private schools to begin with. Because look at it like this. Those vouchers are often proposed as being universal. They're good for everybody. Well, now suddenly that means rich people get them too. And if rich people were currently paying $20,000 for their kids to go to school previously, but now they have a voucher for $10,000 off? I mean, wealthy people saving money at the expense of poor people and, having their kids go to school where these, vagrants, these poor kids can't all afford to go to. So my kids aren't going to be surrounded by poor kids all the time anyway. How silly is that? Remember, we're still all paying for these vouchers, but not everybody's going to be able to reap the benefits of those vouchers. Very unrealistic. But what's wild to me is that there are so many people who defend this idea, who defend this system fundamentally. Maybe the details are a little bit different, but fundamentally defend it, right? And yet we'll still fight against things like free public college. Why? Remember, most of the time, the most common argument I hear against free college is that, but then rich people would be able to go to free college too, and you don't want to pay for rich people's college. If they shouldn't have it, no one should, and that's bullshit, right? Because I think fundamentally we do benefit, generally speaking, from education. Education is not perfect in this country. There are a lot of problems with it, and we can deal with those problems later, but fundamentally, it is good to have access to those things, and it is good to have access to more specialized education as you get into your older years to steer you in the path you may want to go or may want to explore. But free college, right? It's this boogeyman that we cannot have because, rich people get it too. Here's the thing. What's stopping you then from taxing the wealthier families extra to offset the free college for them? If all families get into free college, but then families above a certain tax bracket have to pay a heftier tax to then get into that college or that free school, where's the problem there, right? You don't want rich kids getting into these schools for free, so tax them. That seems fair, right? That seems fair for everybody. Now it's a universal system. Everybody gets in, but the people who can pay more for it do through these taxes. But remember, this is never about taxes. They're always about cutting taxes for wealthier families. So when they say, you don't want rich people going to free college, they're just saying, I don't want poor people going to free college. That's what they're saying. They're just projecting and then replacing the group with the people you're taught to hate, because you're taught to hate, well, the rich, they're the elite, they're the establishment. You can't like them. And fair enough, they are those things. But then if they're those things, why are you getting money from them all the time, politicians? Because they don't actually care, fundamentally. They understand that you care, so they sell it to you by saying, ooh, big boogeyman over here who's in my back pocket and who I'll be eating lunch with later today. But big boogeyman over here is fearful. We should be afraid of them, and we should be afraid of everything that they could benefit from. But you know what? Free systems are generally pretty good for everybody. You wouldn't want to privatize something like fire departments, right? Like, nobody wants that. That just seems like a very universal idea, generally speaking. The few people that do want it, you really shouldn't take seriously, because who in this world can rightfully justify making you sort through piles and mountains of paperwork and sit on the phone to, hope and pray that your fire department's going to come and put the fire that's engulfing your house out, or isn't going to be like, okay, the fire's out now. That's going to be $16,000 every month for the next 30 years of your life, because what the fuck other option do you have, right? If all the fire departments are privatized, what's to stop them from being like, oh, well, this is your house and we can just kind of charge you whatever the hell we want for it, because what are you gonna do about it? It's something you need to live, generally speaking. We all deserve housing. We all deserve, some kind of security in life. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but generally speaking, you can start to see, hopefully, why some of these systems are bad. I might make a longer video more thoroughly discussing privatization in government and why I think it's generally a problem. And you should be skeptical of people who propose it, because remember, anybody who's trying to sell you an idea is usually trying to do it through nefarious means, trying to be like, oh, well, this will be good for you. I have no examples of why that'll be good for you. Or, oh, that thing's bad for you and it has never worked, even though there are plenty of examples of that thing working. When there are examples contradicting directly the thing they're trying to sell to you, that should raise some red flags. Right? There are many other nations that can do free college. There are many other nations that can do things like free healthcare. Remember, we still pay for these through taxes anyway. Why should it not be free at the point of service? But the reason it shouldn't be, quote unquote, is because someone's got to scrape a little money off the top. Someone's got to get rich off of every single system that exists. Our tax systems are complicated so that somebody out there can get paid, can create an industry around doing taxes, when, simply put, taxes don't need to be as hard as they are. They're only hard to intentionally obfuscate things, to make them more difficult for the average person like you or me to do them, so that we do have to go out of our way and subsidize this industry that otherwise doesn't need to exist. And in many cases, that same philosophy can apply elsewhere, where privatization exists. They want to create privatization because they want to take your money. And privatization just means more of your money going to them than a government entity or something. But if you think about it, we're a lot closer to government, let's just say, and I'm going to still use air quotes when I say that too, than we are the 1%, right? Or the obscenely wealthy, the top 10%, etc. So anyway, getting ahead of myself. That's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about in this video. I know it could be a longer one, and I probably could have gone into more detail. There are people who have done better jobs explaining what I just explained as well. I'm no professional by any means, but I would highly recommend checking out channels like The Majority Report, for example, who recently put out a video, I think it was like last week, where they had specifically talked about this exact problem with school vouchers in a much more concise way than I think I ever could. And so, yeah, I would highly recommend checking out channels like those. But of course, be sure to subscribe as you leave this one to go over there and show them your support as well. I hope you did enjoy this one. Stay warm out there and take care.